Okay. All right. So welcome everyone who braved the snow. The few of us here. I actually had the car didn't start, so I had to get somebody to pick me up as well. But we got here. So as we usually do, let's just start all of us, whether we're online or in person, just taking a moment to connect. Even you online, I can see our beautiful altar here. As Lama's Rimshi, this is so wonderful. This main image here is here the main Buddha that purifies so much karma just by seeing. So in Nepal, in Laudo, where Rinpoche has a cave in the Himalayas for his past life, just above the cave, there's a huge rock, like, I don't know, hundreds of meters high, So Rinpoche's wish was always to have a painting of a Buddha on there. So when I was up just after Rinpoche passed away, these artists came up to paint a 30-foot Buddha on the rock. And they were already like 30 feet, 40 feet up on really like fragile scaffolding. I don't know if anyone saw it online. It was really scary. And they were up, but they were fine. They managed. Anyway, this was painted because this rock overlooks like a huge amount of the valley. So it means wherever all the trekkers, the hikers that go up there, they're able to see that image. So it really important, it was really important to Rimshi for that to be done. So that's kind of overseeing the valley up in the Himalayas around Rimshi's cave. So likewise, we have this Buddha overlooking Olias Amogapasha aspect to Chinrizic, overlooking Olias. So taking a moment just to connect with all these different holy objects that we see on the altar. You can also see online, I think. But you know it. Many of us know it. We've been here, So just bringing them to mind. And again, what we want to do is just connect with the fullness of the experience of the Buddha. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. The Buddha's holding this begging bowl filled with nectar. So it's really showing, like, in many ways, his glass is full, his cup is full. We use this expression in the West. So he's completely full with all the qualities that there is to achieve, awaken. All the way up to the path, what it's called in No More Learning. There's nothing more to learn, achieve, awaken, embody, So like that, may we all become full of that experience of fullness, in our whole being, which is embodied in the path of wisdom and compassion. That's the path we need to traverse to get that fullness. And we imagine all beings around us prostrating together. Om Namo Manjushri Namaste. Namo Manjushri Namaste. Namo Namo Manjushri Namaste. Namo Tamashi. All right, we'll bring the prayers up onto the screen. The prayers that we usually start with. Sheila has I think, the PowerPoint. Screen share that. Sheila, you hear me? Yeah. She's doing it, yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, okay. All right, just taking a couple of minutes to settle the mind into meditation. Bringing the awareness to the body and the breath, and just grounding our energy a little bit more in the body and the breath. You know, when it snows like this, there's a shift in weather. Even though we know it's coming, somehow it's a little bit unsettling. Something always pops up that we're not expecting, even though we expect it. So it's amazing how much the weather does affect us, you know, at the level we're at. So just trying to settle the mind back into a place of quietude, openness, receptivity, bringing the awareness to body and breath, being more grounded again. Taking a moment to connect to your motivation. So in the Buddhist tradition, you know, the path that we traverse, the Lamrim, gradual path to enlightenment, it's constantly a process. What we're doing here is slowly, slowly reconfiguring our motivation. And as I mentioned in the first two classes, where we have to start, always try, when we wake up in the morning, try to wake up with a positive, just check your mind. First, check where we are, kind of embracing it, where our mind is now, and awareness of that. And shifting it then into a gear of sort of appreciation for our lives. So I say it's hard to get a whole context how precious our lives are. It takes a bit more deep work. But we try to hold a little bit in our mind where we have good fortune, you know, what we feel fortunate and happy about in our lives. In the context of the Buddhist teachings, it's having this freedom to fill our mind up with spiritual knowledge, to kind of reclaim our wholesomeness, having the teachers and the teachers to be able to guide us in that way. Something we don't maybe connect with early in life, but we need to find that again, a basic wholesomeness, a basic contentness with ourselves as we move deeper into the spiritual path. So at least we drop into our minds how wonderful it is. I'm here. How wonderful it is. I'm alive. How wonderful it is. I live in a place or have access to spiritual nourishment, that which is going to fill my mind more and more with positive qualities. Bridge the gap that I often feel in my mind between the joy I can't feel and the joy that I generally don't, you know, experience. I have to fill up our mind, bridge the gap of where we are now and where we want to be. It's what spiritual practice is. crossing that bridge. So, as Venerable Ravina nicely put, as I mentioned last week, how wonderful it is I haven't died yet. I'll still have the appearance of this human life. See how much we can feel into that a little bit. Can we make that our own wisdom to some extent? So as I mentioned last week, we also need to step by step embrace the uncertainty of our lives, the prospect that our lives are, have only a certain amount of time in them, it's limited. So there needs to be a moving in that direction towards that. It's a kind of wisdom that we need to develop and awaken within ourselves that kind of gives us a kickstart, more deeper kickstart in the spiritual path. Feeling like maybe, what if I only had a year to live? What would that look like? What would be a priority in my life? This is what we're kind of asked to do a little bit on the second part of the path. Start to embrace this wisdom of impermanence, our own impermanence, the impermanence of all phenomena, so that we kind of kickstart ourselves into spiritual practice a little bit more clearly, definitively. Moving us in more into what innately is important in our lives. And again, with this precious human rebirth, what becomes important is our ability to embody more fully, get closer to more fully, really who we are, bridge the gap if who we think we are and who we can become. Our potential for wisdom, our potential for awakening, our potential for getting closer to the qualities of our gurus, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So actually that meditation on impermanence, it kind of kick-starts that wisdom. That's the idea of it. That's what's supposed to do. Not bring about fear, but kick-starting a kind of more innate wisdom that drives us to that reality, slowly, slowly, chips away a little bit to where we're lost, confused, and moving us into a much deeper reality of how we exist, who we are, what our potential is. So ideally, it's actually a more peaceful state of mind. Many of us who are aging, or well, all aging, many of us who are more aged, you know, feeling the age in the body more clearly, retired maybe, or moving in that direction. We have the benefit of being more philosophical about life because we've been through the various challenges. You know, we've been through different parts of our life already. We've learned quite a bit already. We feel the impermanence of life more. I think somebody said to me last week, well, you know, I do know I'm going to die. You know, I'm aware of that. For sure, we feel it. But there's a deeper level of that contemplation we need to go into, a deeper reason why. And as I say, it's to kickstart us more into a little bit more determined spiritual practice. To take a bit more responsibility to awaken something that's much bigger within us. So, of course, to do that, we continually need clear direction, clear inspiration, clear support. And that's what we kind of go to when we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We connect with our kind of spiritual inspiration, you know, our teacher, the Buddha, the Dharma, the teachings that are filling up the gaps in our mind, the gaps of wisdom knowledge, the gaps of compassion. And also the Sangha, you know, spiritual community that are perhaps more endowed with qualities than we are, but can nurse us along the path. So we need that constant support. That's why we're so fortunate to have this centre here, to have Sangha, to have teachers. So we know we need that. We need that constant nourishment. So even when we take refuge ourselves at home, that's what we're connecting with, that source of nourishment, that source that is pulling us up, so to speak, pulling our mind up and out of its kind of limited view right now. And also when we take refuge, we try not to feel it's just out there. But as the more we take refuge, we try to feel it's in there too. We're taking refuge in our the possibility enlightenment. Gaining a deeper trust, confidence that our mind can keep moving forward, not down. As I mentioned last week, not down the hill, but up the hill. So we need to gain that inner confidence. And when we study, reflect, and meditate, that should happen, you know. We get a wee bit more trust in our Buddha nature and our potential to transform. Become more full instead of empty. So we imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, or as we have an altar here, and just you know, many holy beings, our gurus, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all the holy saints and beings who have practiced in the path, nourishing us, nourishing that Buddha nature with golden light and nectar, just flowing as we chant the refuge prayer, as we do the mandala offering, as we do some mantras, just to set the mind for listening, reflecting, contemplating whatever we hear today, so that maybe something can turn your mind in inspiring, positive direction, you know, nourishes a little bit more. O상에 조단 속이 족남라 잔주 바르 다기 겹스지 다기 진석이 배소남기 롤라 벤지르 상게 르바쇼 상게 조단 속이 족남라 잔주 바르 다기 겹스지 다기 진석이 배소남기 롤라 펜지르 상게르 parshok. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Then we offer a mandala. Again, why do we offer a mandala? Think about it for a moment. Do we know what comes to mind? I think many of us have done it many times here. So why do we offer? One reason is the mind, the wisdom mind, the bodhicitta mind, these two wings that we want to develop, they're very rich states of mind. We'll talk about that a little bit more today. Emptiness isn't a void, a nothingness, a sort of blank out in space experience. Sounds like that. It's a very rich and full state of being, fully connected with ourselves, fully connected with the nature of all beings. So to get there, we need to develop a sort of inner contentment, a merit, a fullness of being. We need to step by step create that. Sometimes it's called a positive environment, but it's a kind of richer environment in our mind, you know, a real deep sense of contentedness. And a kind of rich sense of, you know, that's like that determination to be free from suffering and its causes. It's actually a really rich and vigorous state of mind. So to create that in our mind, we need to sort of merit, you know, we need a spiritual momentum, fuel. So offering mandala, making offerings, creating the wealth of generosity, creates conditions in our mind to realize that full nature of emptiness. So we imagine something beautiful, you know, that we enjoy, or the mandala as you know it, the traditional mandala, or just offering, you know, something beautiful from your heart. Imagine visualizing and offering that to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, for yourself and on behalf of all the sentient beings as we chant the prayer. Ozaji bogi jushime do dramri rablingje nye de gyambadi sangye jindu mete uwa yedrogun namdak shina chobarsho yedam guru ratna mandala kamne yadayami Tayada om mene mene ma minaye soha. Tayada om mene mene ma minaye soha. Tayada om mene mene ma minaye soha. Tayada o mene mene ma minaye soha. Tayada o mene mene ma minaye soha. Tayada Om mene mene maha menaye soha. All right. So last week, oh no, maybe start with. Yeah, last week we talked about, at the end, talked a little about the importance, as I mentioned, to the meditation as well. How we need to bring this, what we already know, that we're going to, we're going to die. Life is short and permanent. We kind of know it on some level, but we don't know it on a sort of, I think we don't know it on a deep level. Yeah. It's kind of in our head and it's in our face a little bit as we get older. But I think, because one lady said to me at the end last week, yeah, but I have a good feeling that I'm going to die. Yeah, I says, it's good. That's good, I think we all kind of know it too. But there's an importance to that, why we do it, why we bring it closer into our heart, why we try and make it sort of more heartfelt. There's a reason for that in terms of being able to activate us on the spiritual path. Yeah. To activate us out of, there's many things it does, activates us out of laziness, I think, yeah. If we thought we only had a year to live, I remember Venerable Renee told me that he led a retreat. So we were very fortunate in California because Venerable Rebo Rinpoche, who we have a picture of him, I think, in the centre. He's a great, great Lama, he spent 25 years in a prison in Tibet, when Tibet was taken over. He spent 25, he was captured, tortured, unbelievable, but so he spent something like 25 years and eventually was released, but he was tortured and everything. And then the last part of his life, he taught quite extensively to Westerners in the West. So he had taught, he went through the Lam Rim, it was very special to be in his presence, very soft, subdued mind. I wasn't there, but he had this sort of trusted translator. I missed that teaching. And his translator, one time somebody asked Rinpoche about, he never talked, I don't think he talked about it much in public, what happened. But one time somebody asked in the audience and he shared a little bit and the translator started crying. You could hardly share what Rinpoche was saying, and I don't remember the contents of it. What touched me is like the translator was finding it hard to, I think Rinpoche wouldn't have went into vivid detail, but just even what he shared, was it must have been quite intense, So anyway, there's that part, So anyway, Rinpoche, shared that. And then Venerable Renee, who many of you know, he led a retreat sometime after that, did you go to that, Venerable Shank? He led a retreat. Anyway, at Vajrapani, I think it was a couple of weeks or something, because Rinpoche went through the whole 9 points, how you meditate in death. The first one is like, first of all, seeing that death is definite, So we know that death's definite, but it's still a bit over there, yeah. It's definite somewhere over there. That's more comfortable for our minds, And the time is indefinite. It's much harder to meditate on, because we want to feel like it's somewhere over there, but actually it could be somewhere quite here, And that's the one that's supposed to spur us into spiritual practice, Thinking like, well, I don't know how long I've got, I really don't know. So, and I think what that does, that meditation, because not that I have that realization, but I think what it does is it actually awakens some deeper wisdom nature that's not functioning. When we're just in the reality of feeling like I've got a while to live, feeling like things are sort of solid and concrete. Because we do feel like that. There's a concreteness to our life that's kind of quite hard to, and when we really check in, that concreteness it's painful. It's uncomfortable. It's our karmic baggage. Octavia and I were talking about that yesterday. Our karmic baggage, our conceptions karmic baggage, and also our kind of delusions or our conceptions that are blocking our wisdom. Right, so we have this incredible, vast, beautiful wisdom nature that needs to come out. That's kind of almost, I think it's maybe screaming to come out. But we're blocking it. Where our kind of these kind of what the first obstacle, the first thing we need to move through in the spiritual path, the first what we call, moving into renunciation, where we really bump into that, where we should move into it, is when we can shift away this kind of concrete concept to attachment. Concrete concept or concrete the attachment, but creates a kind of concrete concept of us going to live a long time. We do kind of feel that, and it's a little bit of a scary place to go to. If you sit and think about trying meditate, I think Venerable Shanka, you did some retreat on death and impermanence. That one, death is indefinite. Quite hard, yeah? The mind doesn't kind of want to almost go there, yeah? So we have these kind of you have these different reasonings you go into to try and like convince the mind that this is the case, because it is the case. But the mind doesn't want to hear, somewhere. So there's some kind of toing and froing with that, when you sit with these meditations. So yes, we're very lucky. Actually, it's very lucky. Those of us who've retired, we have a little bit more time and space, and we're more reflective because we feel impermanence a bit more. It's kind of harder when you're younger because you're trying to make your life, unless we have a fortune to come in with some of that wisdom already. We tend to go in the direction of trying to make our life more concrete and solid in this direction or that direction. And then we bump into a lot of problems. Sometimes it works out, it kind of works out, but it doesn't always work out. Works out a little bit. So anyway, because I'm going to try a little bit, not talk much about emptiness today, but to get to the kind of juicy, we can say it's a juicy part, emptiness. Sometimes for people it's a bit of a scary part. We have to kind of do this. We have to do these stepping stone processes because it's not possible. Right now, what's the main, in some ways, Buddhism's really simple. It's just our minds aren't simple. It's simple. What's the main reason we're not connected deeply with our innate wisdom? That's always there. That's where we want to go. That's where we want to check, move into that, awaken that up. The main reason in the Buddhist tradition is what's the main reason? What's blocking our wisdom right now? What's the key? What's the main troublemaker? Ignorance. And what does that produce? Yes, I, me, my, yeah. So we all know that for sure, it creates that. It's like a bit of a poverty mindset. Yeah. We become a victim of ourselves. A very small view of ourselves. And it's not like beating us up or anything. That's why from the very start, we have to build up this momentum, this kind of joy, this kind of awaken something deeper in ourselves to feel like there's a possibility to go beyond this view of self. We can't just run to the view of self, It's not possible. We can't just jump here. First of all, we can't really see it. It's quite hard to see who we think we are. It's quite easy to see it when somebody criticizes us. If we're looking up, if we're checking up, if we're investigative. But it's quite hard and to see that and to recognize that as a sort of painful state of mind, a kind of sore that's blocking, that's not healed yet in the mind. Because it's quite precious to us. My me, my I, myself. That's true, it is. We're so familiar with it. You know, we've had it since what the Buddhists say, beginningless time. We've not yet. We haven't really got to the bottom of how this sense of self is appearing, blocking and kind of yeah, closing off the mind, you know, from its higher nature. I think many of us have probably done a lot of spiritual practice in our past lives. And that's something to take heart in when you study karma, when you study what it takes to get what we call a precious human life. That's why, in some level, it takes a bit more to get a handle on what a precious human life is. You know, we can't cover that in this class, and many of you have had teachings on that. But when you really get a handle on that, you know, that it takes a lot to get this appearance that we're here already now, you know, and to have the lives that we have. They're not perfect yet, but that takes a lot of spiritual momentum. And some of us might have got quite close to achieving deeper realizations. You know, they say that we've popped in and out of different realms. We've been up in the God realm and the formless realm. That's where you can sit in samadhi for many hours, you know, there, but it doesn't last, and eventually you fall down, you know. So you can study these different realms that we go up and down in, and we've been in, you know, we've all kind of experienced that most likely. That's why the spiritual inclination, the yearning that we have when we come to practice, there's a yearning there. A yearning for peace, a yearning for more happiness, a yearning for wisdom. There's something we're always yearning for. That's coming from our deep fundamental nature, I think, you know, for sure. And from our imprints, our spiritual practice for past life, but we haven't quite knocked the nail on the head, right? So I think Buddhism has the solution. There's many spiritual traditions and practices, and maybe they all have the solution. I don't know, you know. But the more we investigate the Dharma, what the Buddha taught, I think it really does hold the solution of why we still quite haven't landed in what we call liberation and enlightenment. Still not quite there. You know, even though I think many of us, as I say, have been probably trying to do it for some lifetimes. But maybe not continuity, so we get lost in this and that and everything. So what we want to start doing to kind of address this kind of, what the Buddha said is the main troublemaker, this very solid sense of self, you know, that comes up quite clearly. We say, well, no, I feel quite fluid and I can go with this, I can go with the flow, and I'm in the space and I'm in the zone and things don't really bother me, but there's still an I there that's in that experience doing that, you know. So first stage, you know, it's almost like we have the sense of self, and then we have these kind of like guardians that are protecting it nicely, protecting our comfort zone there that feels very comfortable. The guardians of, well, the ignorance, the kind of something that's covering the mind, the sort of wrong view of self, that's projecting a wrong view of self. But then the other two is the attachment and the anger, you know, aversion, that those two that are going back and forward all the time, you know. So those ones we need to get, because they're more like the guardians or protector, we need to chip away at them first, you know, because we can't really get a good insight into how the I is appearing to the mind. It's quite hard to see how the I is appearing to the mind. I mean, we study, we reflect. Christopher, you've done quite a bit of study now, yeah? I think you've studied more philosophy than I have, for sure, you know. And that's what we study for. The ultimate goal is to get to that sense of I, you know, how it appears in the mind, how it's confused, and how we can kind of step by step develop this wisdom, open up our wisdom nature that's more powerful than the I, more powerful than the distorted wisdom, distorted view, sorry, that we have right now. So meditation on impermanence is the first step at chipping away at that. Whether you're in the Gelug tradition, the Nyingma tradition, the Kagyu tradition, there's 4 Buddhist traditions, 4 Buddhist schools. All of them, you know, emphasize the importance of this meditation to kickstart us, what it does. So yeah, sorry, sidetracked. I'll go back to that now, that story about Venerable Renee. So yeah, so they did this meditation on a whole retreat on what Rimshi she taught around death and impermanence. There's this 9-point analysis. And the 3 main ones are death is definite. So you get a feeling of that, meditating that for a while, and then you feel like, whoa, that's touching something. It's supposed to touch the attachment. But what it does, not enough, so it's a little bit like, when you first start to heal a wound, it's like, oh, it's a bit sore, But then slowly you start to feel a bit better. So I think each meditation's a bit like that. It sort of touches the wound, but you're more meditating, it becomes a wisdom. You feel better. You start to feel more whole. That's what it should really be. So there's a little bit pain in the beginning, a little bit of aversion, pain. Ooh, that's a wee bit uncomfortable. But then I think out of that, we start to develop then the wisdom's able to breathe. Because right now our wisdom can't breathe. So, I mean, it breathes a little bit, but it's mainly because of this clinging mind, this clinging to solidity, solid I, solid everything, and kind of buying into that's blocking the wisdom nature. So anyway, Venerable Renee, they did that, and then they did the death is indefinite. That's a little bit more going in there, And then I think they must have meditated on the last point about, so you get to the point, what wakens up for you. It's a little bit like I mentioned last week, I think, if you have this if you have a kind of near-death experience or an experience of going to the doctor and they're telling you only have a certain amount of time to live, something out of that wakes up in us, it's like another clarity, another like meaning of life. Yeah. Some of us have probably been through that already. However, so Venerable Renee did that. So they did all these 9 points, and then at the end of the retreat, I think they all left. And then Venerable Renee said he met a couple who had done the retreat with him. And they said, oh, it was such a great retreat, it was brilliant. So what we realized is we had to go traveling and see stuff, So they got the experience of the first 2 things, They got the experience of death is definite. And then they thought, well, if I've only got this long, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do the next thing. And so Renee was like, oh, that's interesting. Because the third point is what it should move you into is kind of a sense of urgency for spiritual practice, And again, some of us have that already to some extent because we see life slipping away, So we'd have that to some extent, but when we go into maybe a little bit more treat meditation, even in our daily lives, we try to bring up that wisdom. It's a wisdom mind that's it also can cut through the solidity of life. Shake what we normally feel is very solid and concrete in our life. It kind of shakes that up. Yeah. I mean, if we thought, okay, I went to doctor's today, they said I've only got 3 months to live. All we thought we were going to do and accomplish in the next year or 2 years, it would totally shake that up. Wouldn't you think? If we just go into that a little bit. So that's what we're trying to do, that meditation. Shake up our lives a little bit, shake up how we hold on to things, our life, who we are, our body, our thoughts, our feelings, shake that up to try and investigate more how things really exist, Move the mind away, see what's behind what's normally appearing to our mind, our normal concepts. Should allow us to step back a little bit and be able to be more investigative, to create more analysis and sort of soften the mindy attachment and clinging. That's what that meditation is supposed to do. A little bit soften the mind. Step back into our more wisdom mind, our wisdom awareness. Step back into more our deeper, more subtle nature. So we have 3 levels of consciousness. I think I mentioned before, gross consciousness. So that's what we're usually caught up in. Gross consciousness, everything appears in that level more solid and concrete. You know, through the sense doors right now, because they're more like, they're deluded, coarser consciousnesses. So things appear more coarse in the mind, you know, appearances in the mind are more coarse. And that's generally what we identify most of the time, a sort of coarser sense of ourself, a coarser sense of more solid, concrete sense of reality. So, of course, when we meditate, we want to kind of step out of that a little bit. That's what we're all trying to do, step out of that busyness. Create something a little bit more peaceful in ourselves. Peaceful environment. Clearer environment, clearer space. So when we meditate in death and impermanence, that's what the experience is supposed to bring, a little bit more peace. Because we're trying to go back into what's really meaningful. That deeper part of yourself. That part where we can communicate with our wisdom nature. So death and impermanence meditation's kind of like that, you know. It's, if we had only a certain amount of time to live, we sort of naturally step away to some extent for appearances. Mind becomes softer, a little bit more peaceful. And maybe things around us seem a little bit more like dream-like. Shifting and moving, not as concrete. So that's a space we want to try and get into with that meditation. Befriending that a little bit, becoming more familiar, happy, content in that space. It doesn't mean that we don't deal with this life stuff, but there's a little bit less clinging to this life stuff that creates the up and down, that creates the emotions, the emotional mind, the more delusional mind. I mean, if we were going to die, you know, we had that thought, you know, it's really possible I've only got, you know, this small amount of time to live. Our mind just wouldn't go up and down as much. There's still a wisdom nature, a clarity and ability to be able to communicate and function, but we're in a deeper, more peaceful space as we function through life. And we just don't cling as much to appearances, because that's the key. That's the main problem. It's not so much what's appearing to the mind, it's the mind that clings, gets wrapped up, and plays out a lot of stories with appearances. So we want a softer and less clingy state of mind. That's a richer, more peaceful state of mind. So as Lama Yeshe says, you know, renunciation, emerging, starting to emerge from concrete appearances, emerge out of that. Not so much the appearance, but the clinging to that, our attachment, how we hallucinate there's something more there than there is. You know, something's really good or really bad because we're putting more than it's really there, you know. It's not just bad, but then it becomes really good or really bad or really hard or really this or really that, you know, because we're not investigating what's really going on there. We're buying into the appearances of our mind. And that's just what creates the circling. That's what digs ourselves deeper into me, myself, and I. Deeper into the whole of kind of delusion, victim, poverty, mind. So we want to create space for that mind. And the space comes from thinking about and our impermanent nature, all beings' impermanent nature. We're definitely going to leave this appearance of this life. We need to step out of it, probably sooner rather than later, because even though we might have 15, 20 years to live, it goes so fast, that last 15, 20 years. It's like the waterfall over the mountaintop. It's going faster and faster and faster, like through gravity, or the force of the water. So it's a bit like that with the current of your life. It goes faster the closer we get to death. So that appearance of 15, 20 years becomes very short, very quick, very fast. So when we step into a little bit more deeper reflection in death and impairment, especially the time that it's indefinite, we don't really know when, it really kickstarts our wisdom nature, kickstarts the natural, peaceful, quiet, investigative state of mind that we want to go deeper into the real, the real crux of the problem. Why we're still in this cycle of birth, old age, sickness, and death. What's really causing that? That's what we need to go deeper into. So we know it's self, I, my, that clinging to that. So we want to go into a deeper, quieter state of mind to be really, really able to investigate that. I mean, that's why they say, in the Lam Rim, generally we try to develop calm abiding, a very peaceful kind of level, maintenance of concentration. Because it's in that place, when the mind's peaceful and quiet, we can start to identify and work with how the I is appearing to the mind. What we've created with our mind, that I, what is that? What is that sense of self? How does it appear to the mind? So we may approach the path in a way, one way also. It's a bit like recognizing that we have this addiction. Recognizing that we have, so we do want space, peace, wisdom, all that stuff, but there's still a sort of innate addiction going on there that we need to get more on top of, move through. It's like being an alcoholic, we are still addicted to, we still hold on to this I being able to give us some level of satisfaction. Still having it being important. I mean, for us, when we see an alcoholic or drug addict, it's very easy to see how that's creating so much suffering, problem, different layers of problem for that person. Us who don't have that, we don't have that addiction. But the Buddhas, when they look at us, we're quite similar to that for them. That's why they have so much compassion, because we're still addicted to, still holding on to, feeling like this sense of self is like somehow important. I mean, we know selfishness isn't good. We know some of the grosser levels of self aren't helping ourselves and others, they harm others. But we haven't, we have to develop this kind of, like an alcoholic, and like before they go to AA, they need to have quite a determination to do that. Yeah, it takes a lot, so it's a lot of courage, a lot of work. If you've had it for a long time, drug addict, I mean, heroin, these things, very hard to recover from. So you need a lot of, they need a lot of determination, they need a lot of support, need a lot of courage. So it's very like that when we're investigating the Buddhist path. We need to have quite a wide view of this, of our practice. Long view. Like once you go to AA, you go there for life, yeah. You don't like stop out. You have to go every week or to meetings. And that's why we have the centre. Because we know, and especially those who have been practicing for some time, we know that it's going to take time to get through, this deep sense of clinging to, deep clinging and view of ourselves that we feel really fundamentally who we are. Feels quite fundamentally strong in us. It's not easy to shift off. It's not easy to, so we need a lot of study, reflection, meditation. But we also need to recognize there's a big part of it. I'm reading this book, wonderful book about the realizations and the visions of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's very inspiring. Unfortunately, it's not available yet in the West. I was telling Octavia yesterday, but hopefully soon. I think it's an Indian, it was just published in Dharamsala. But it's really good because it gives you an insight into where are we going? What kind of mindset? Because His Holiness over the years has shared in some ways where he is on the path. I mean, whether he is or not, I don't know, but he's shared a little bit of insights of like what this experience is, what that experience is. And so it's very helpful, because mostly in the Tibetan tradition, you're not supposed to talk about your realizations, because it can let them, and it can maybe create some pride. But I think His Holiness is probably the only one who can do, because we know there's no pride there, and he's doing it to benefit us, to help us, to kind of really get what are the, and to get inspired about these realizations, to get inspired about what is beyond me, myself, and I. His Holiness will talk about how he got goosebumps when he feels like he's getting really close to the realization of emptiness, or like some, not like the actual realization, but some more like, what's the one before the kind of, not RF, what's the one before Venerable Dream? Something like that, yeah. So there's like steps before you get the realization. He mentions actually 3 steps, but I can't remember what the other 2 are. But it's kind of like so he was getting like really excited. And I was like, wow, I mean, it was really interesting, because we think renunciation and emptiness. And I mean, sometimes it feels quite heavy, some people just run off when they hear that, But actually what these are, these mindsets. So that's what I'm saying, that meditation on death and impermanence, if we do it well, creates more peace and happiness, because we're moving away from this tight, unrelaxed, clingy mind to we have these levels of consciousness that are much more deep, much more investigative, much more in the nature of wisdom and compassion. We're just not communicating with them enough. Right? So what our wisdom, what our meditation is doing, what these meditations want to do is we want to communicate with them. We want to go back into them. I mean, at the death time, we go back into the clear light nature. Sounds great. But it's scary if if you've not been there this life, if we haven't been able to get a bit close to that. So, when you read His Holiness, his biography, that one, on his realization, it's actually so important for some Westerners for us to read, because, I haven't experienced that. I mean, of course, we have experiences, our mind being happy, blissful, peaceful like that, but it's always like we're still trying to battle with some of these meditations, what does it really mean to get that experience impermanence and death? What does it feel like when you're maybe even getting an inferential experience of emptiness? And what that is your mind's getting more and more blissful, more and more peaceful, more and more clear. That's what it should be. That's what His Holiness is talking about. Then when he talks about the tantric realizations, it's incredible as well. It's like the sense of just going home, something like that is Celine expressed, you know. Not that he goes, he doesn't say this is what's happening to me, but he kind of say, I'll read the prayer and feel like, oh, this is what I feel like, maybe where I'm going, or like that. He doesn't say it directly, although there is a few things that he's been saying directly as well. So this is so I think what we need to feel is like, definitely when we meditate on these topics, we need to be feeling more, yes, we have to get to we have to kind of move through the painful point, you know. But eventually, as we move through them, the mind, if we're doing the meditation right, mind can be getting more deep, more peaceful, more clear, and getting closer to understanding how the I appears to our mind. Because if we don't uproot that, we can get quite, you know, we get deep levels of concentration, meditation. But if we don't completely uproot the I, again, we're going to have to keep circling, you know, because there's something there that we're still grasping and clinging to. The mind's not completely liberated for that. So we need to get a clear sense of what it's called in the teachings is the gacha, the object to be refuted. How the I, a kind of sense of how the I is appearing to our mind. That's the kind of first step. It's almost like the most difficult step. Some of us are familiar with the 4-point analysis, how we analyze and try to recognize how the I is appearing to our mind. First, the gacha, the object to be refuted. Lam Soprim, she was very good at that, showing the students their object to be refuted. Sometimes he would put you into really difficult situations and you were like, oh, then you could really see the I, you know, how the I appears, because it's almost like that, you know. You need to think one easy way to see that a little bit, to recognize that, is when somebody, as I say, somebody, you know, our friends or family, they're actually quite helpful for that. Maybe not friends, maybe not people we label friends, but our family members, people we have a problem with, can often help us when that I comes up and somebody criticizes, that sense of self comes up. Yeah, if we think back, can anyone not think back to a time when somebody's criticized them? I think it's almost impossible. So how you do, you know, how do you do this kind of reflection or meditation? How do we move into it a little bit? How do we get to that troublemaker? Is we need to bring it up, because it's very comfortably nestled most every day, all day in the mind, in the heart, the sense of I. Even if we think we don't have a strong sense of self, maybe we don't get easily offended, easily hurt. We still might have a kind mind, good mind. But what's important in the practice, the meditation practice on emptiness, is to try to actually really purposefully bring it up. We want to uproot it, yeah? So we want to see how is I, Angie, Christopher, I'll tell you, how is it appearing when somebody calls your name? There's a sense of something appearing to the mind, very concretely and clear. Yeah, a sense of I popping up. Yes, no. Right, there is, yeah. So in that meditation, what you try to do is, first of all, 4-point analysis. First of all, try to get a really clear idea of how it's appearing to the mind. Right, so that, and usually as soon as it appears, it's kind of always there. Anyway, always in the heart there, me, my, I. I mean, we think, we talk, all thoughts or feelings, or emotions, they're all kind of, you know, they're all influenced in a sense by this sense of I. So we want to, first of all, like get a really strong feeling of how the I appears to the mind. And then how do we sort of break that, soften that, cut through that, recognize it's mistaken, confused. We use a little bit more analysis. What's the first, what do you do? What's the first analysis? Christopher, you know, 4-point analysis, what's the first one? I've got to pick on you. No, I wasn't sure because you, don't worry, yeah. Anyone online? 4-point analysis, how are we, you know, it's simple in a way, you know, it's only 4 points, you know, so what's the next one? Does anyone know? Anyone want to be brave enough to? Oh, I see. Okay, right, that's true, yeah. So we'll just leave it. Venerable Shankar, after you recognize the object to refutation, what's the next one? I don't blame you. I'd probably blank out when somebody asks me in a class, you know. Yeah, it's good. It's like you see your eye. Oh God, I'm blanking out. Hmm?
It's that it doesn't exist in singly, it doesn't exist multiply. That's the
You've got so many, maybe you've just got different, I mean, there's different analyses you can do for the eye. Almost there, almost there. So where can the eye, if the eye exists at all, right? If the eye is really like, yeah, if it's really me, where can it exist? Over there? In my computer? Well, sometimes it feels like it's in my computer when I say my computer, yeah. This is mine. So somehow the eye goes in there, yeah. But there's no eye in there. But somehow that's what happens. We put the eye in there, the energy of the eye in there, you know, but or whatever. But yeah, so mainly what we're talking about here is if the eye exists at all, it can either exist inside the body. What are we composed of? There's 5 aggregates, but we're just going to simplify it today. We're composed of body, feeling, mind. I think if we think about it, if we think my mind, my body, I feel tired, I feel hungry. When we think my mind, we're kind of in some way, or my thoughts, you know, we're sort of identifying in some way with thoughts. I feel hungry, I feel tired. We're identifying, we're possessing in some way the thoughts and the feelings, you know, there's a possessor there. Mind, body, and I think the element of feeling, you know, feeling's very strong for us, you know, what we feel, you know. So we could just say there, you know, already that's maybe the context, in that context of where we feel. So if the eye's going to exist, it's either we have to establish really, it's like using a little bit of analysis and wisdom. If the eye exists, it's either going to exist oneness, you know, with the body, mind, and feelings, or separate from that. Do you think? Is there any other solutions? It's either one with the body, mind, and feeling, one with the container of all our experiences, or something kind of maybe more separate from that. Is there any other possibility? Would be? Maybe there is. But generally, that's how we sort of try and establish that clearly in the mind. That it's either oneness with those experiences or somehow separate, existing separate for there, you know. But it can't really be sort of out there somewhere, you know, that's not possible. So we go through this analysis of, first of all, getting clear that it has to be one or the other. And then we break down and then we see that actually it's not oneness with the body, mind, it's not oneness with it's not oneness with anything in there. And it's not certainly existing something separate from there. There's nothing that is separate from there. So in that space, somehow, you know, we have to go more deeper into seeing that it's not existing in any way separate, inherently, independently from any of that experience. Either one or separate, in any separate, independent, inherent, existent way. So then, at that point, the mind's supposed to move into Well, how does the I exist? I mean, we still exist. It's not that we don't exist at all. We exist from a mere labeling, something very subtle, some sort of subtle, dependent way of forming, arising, existing in some sort of subtle, dependent way, independence on the body, mind, thoughts, experiences. We exist in some way there, something very dependent or merely labeled. That's a big jump. It's a big leap, yeah? But first of all, it's really sort of breaking down when we do that analysis. We're just trying to break down in some way how we think we exist, but we don't exist like that. That's the first part. Just trying to chip away at how we appear to exist right now, but just trying to establish at least that's not correct. That's a little bit of wisdom already. We might not be able to jump into how we do exist, but we have to start with start with just questioning how the I appears to the mind. Sometimes it appears like I'm possessing my mind. My mind. There's a my possessing my mind. My thoughts, a possessor of thoughts. Sometimes it appears like when we say I am tired, I'm sick, then we identify very strongly at that time with the body. But there's always a sense of I behind that. But if the I appeared, so at that moment when we think my body, where is the my? Where is the my thoughts, my feelings? It's feeling separate, it's feeling like a possessor of the body. But where is it? If I am hungry, there's more a feeling like being the body. So am I my stomach at that time? So I think the first step really, and of course I'm not really qualified to teach emptiness on a deep level, but the first step for us, when we get a wee bit more space, quietude in the mind, is bringing up, allowing, there's this practice that one can do, it's a high sugar tantra practice, but it's called chew, You go into supposed to go to scary places. And that in that place, you do this practice and it's supposed to actually, you use the meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta. You got a scary place to bring up the I. And you use the meditation, that practice on emptiness and bodhicitta, to kind of refute and start to see how the I is not existing at all, how it appears, But you use the scariness of the place to kind of bring up the I. And then use the meditation, the practice you're doing, to kind of awaken the wisdom that's able to sort of cut through this wrong, perverted view of sense of self. So even though we can't go through the 4 points, we can't get to the kind of most subtle one, that actually how the I is, what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas say, what the Gurus say, ultimately how the I exists is mere existing in mere name, merely labeled, a very, very, very subtle dependent arising that's nature is emptiness. First step, when we go through our day, can we just check up how the I is appearing to our mind? Can we start to break down the view that that's real, that we believe in that is somehow concrete and solid? That's the first step in, I think, approaching emptiness, just trying to question how the I appears in the mind. Question that. Nudge against it. Push against it a little bit. And think, I'm like this, I'm like that. Sometimes we put ourselves in a sort of tight hole of who we think we are. Limit ourselves, So that's mindfulness. Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to talk quite a few meditations on, and meditations, walking meditations. We can go about our day. You know, we don't need to get deep into emptiness in the beginning, but actually for studying emptiness, we do want to, when we get off the cushion in our day, just be aware of how the I appears to our mind. When we think my mind, my thoughts, who is the my behind the thoughts? Where is it? Is it in the experience, our body? Is it our body? When we say my thoughts, I mean, who is the my? It's not our thoughts, because we're possessing the thoughts at that time. So that one, that concrete, solid one, that's the one that doesn't exist at all. So ultimately, when you do these meditations on emptiness, first of all, you have to discover the one that doesn't exist. And in that wisdom, move into the space of the one that does exist, the merely labeled one. The one that's existing in dependence on body, mind, feeling, emotions, what we call, you know, more elaborately, the 5 aggregates, the 5 aspects of who we are, you know, that we have. The I exists on dependence on those, merely labeled on those. And actually that wisdom I mentioned in the beginning, it's a very rich wisdom, very open wisdom. It's the fullness of our being. When we get connected with all beings, when we realize our nature. Right now, we always feel separate. I mean, we get a connectedness with others when we talk, when we enjoy, but there's still a separateness always going on. And that's coming from still feeling like there's a me separate from you. It's quite deep, you know, it's quite innate. But it's not oneness with our wisdom nature. It's adventitious. So that's what we want to chip away at, that adventitious one. And we can do it in our daily life just by questioning a little bit of a spacious mind, you know, questioning how the I appears and trying to nudge it with our wisdom and say, that's not right. I might not get to the point to where you are, but we start when that's not right. That's not right. That's not right there, yeah. That's how we can maintain a little bit of meditation on emptiness on our daily lives, you know, just nudging away, chipping away at the gotcha, the way, the mistaken way the I appears to our mind. And then the more we study, we reflect, we meditate, we purify, we collect merit. We need conditions for the mind to realize emptiness. You know, we need conditions for that fullness to come, that wisdom nature to open. But certainly in our daily life, mindfulness, we can just try and kind of keep analyzing, especially when and that helps you to prepare. So when the mind gets upset, somebody says something difficult, you're going through a hard time, we're already a little bit trained, you know, like to just say, wait a minute, my I's not existing like that. It's not really like that, you know. I'm making it much more solid and concrete than it really is. All the great gurus, the lamas, they have incredible lightness of mind, you know, they just float from one place to the next, literally, you know. But we have a heaviness, and the main heaviness is coming from this, like how we hold on to the view self, you know. It's not so much the appearance of the self, it's the holding on to it. So death and impermanence, we want to step back a little bit from the clinging, grasping mind. And then in that space, then we have a little bit more space to investigate and just kind of see if we can find how this I is appearing to our mind, the object to be refuted. the distorted, confused one. So of course, when we do more like tantra practices, mantra, meditation, what we're trying to do with those is get closer to the experience of the deity, because what the deity is in that blissful experience of emptiness, yeah. So that's why when we purify, collect merit, do these kinds of practices, it's also helping us to waken up this insight, special ability to overcome this very small view self. You know, because it's waking up a much bigger, fundamental, pure nature that we have. So we kind of need both, you know, we need the purification, we need to collect merit, we need to create the causes and conditions, but we also need to make sure that what we're chipping away at is our sense of solidity, using that to chip away at solidity, not just to purify and feel good, but really this is where it comes in, you know, and this is where it's so inspiring when you read His Holiness's book. Even though we know he's already a great being, probably coming into this life, but he spent, and maybe we can't do all that, you know, but he said, you know, how he spent a long time and developed this kind of really deep determination to overcome the wrong view of self, you know, and how he was talked about the various experiences he had on his path of doing that, you know. So we need that encouragement, and what that experience looks like, how it's so full, rich, blissful, you know. Because I think also from our view self, it's hard to imagine what that experience would be. It's not easy, you know, to imagine what we get. Nice experiences in our meditation for sure, but to really get, His Holiness said at one point he could taste emptiness, like literally some sort of taste, you know. So, and I think that once you get a taste, then the mind just wants to go there. It's not, you don't want to go back there. It's almost like, again, somebody who's been alcoholic, maybe addict for a long, long time, but then when they really get a taste of the, you know, the healing process, I think then it's much easier to go. But the beginning's kind of tough, you know, because you're like, well, that looks better than this, you know. You know, our clinging attached mind to our 5-star samsara that we're all in looks okay, you know. But I think it takes a while to get the taste, you know. So that's why we need the inspiration of the great masters. We need, as Westerners, I think, to hear what His Holiness experience is. Even if other lamas didn't want to talk about it, I mean, we can feel it when they're in their presence, you know. But it's very inspiring to see, oh, well, that's what can really happen when you do this and that and the next thing. So I think that's why His Holiness in some way manifests that, coming from, like, maybe he says delusion, I don't know, you know, but how he's kind of walked through that and out of that, and what that experience is step by step, you know, what we can. And also knowing that there are struggles in the beginning. I mean, we struggle as an addict, as addicted to self. It's a struggle to get out of that in the beginning, because we haven't tasted what it's like on the other side yet, you know, or even we taste some, but not completely. So my teacher, there's these set of sutras. Oh, we're on sutras called the Prajnaparamita. They are the sutras on the wisdom teachings of emptiness, and they were taught by Buddha in a place called Rajgriha when he was alive, when he was in this world. Feels like that's far away, yeah. Can everyone still hear? People still hear me online? Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm not too far away for the mic. So I wanted to share this as well. There's one. There's these teachings called the Prajnaparamita. So I think Venerable Yonten taught the Heart Sutra. Maybe did she teach that a few weeks ago? So that's one more a condensed form of the Prajnaparamita. But there's like 100,000 there's 100,000 verses, 25,000 to 8,000. The Heart Sutra, and then there's a syllable ah. You know, so there's all these different variations of the wisdom teachings that the Buddha taught. So he taught them in Rajgriha, and then they were taken at some point by other beings, like gods and deities. And one of the types of beings was a Naga. They were taken away to the Naga realms. Nagas are beings who are kind of part reptilian. So I don't know. I think they might look like mermaids a little bit as well. It's like part human, part it's a different realm that you can be born into. So supposedly they hold a lot of wealth, they're holders of wealth. But so I think, it's possible like some of these beings exist because, why do people draw mermaids? And I mean, and I think it's the same with horror movies. People come up with all these horror movies probably because they've been in a hell realm a couple of lifetimes ago. So I think it's similar with with these. We know there's different types of beings, but these Nagas, they have like part reptilian bodies. And actually, in Scotland, there's anybody heard of the Loch Ness Monster? So, from the Buddhist viewpoint, that's a Naga, you know. There's movies about people who have seen them and not seen them and all this stuff. Some people have the karma. It's supposed to be a really big Naga that lives in the lake. And when this one Lama came to, I heard of one Lama. When I was there, I did a retreat on next to the Loch Ness. So before the retreat, we have these practices of making offerings to the local spirits. So you can do this sort of milk offering practice with jewels and everything that you offer to the Nagas, just to kind of keep them happy. So when you're doing a retreat, there's no kind of obstacles with them. And they can also bring, because they're also like guardians, they're known as guardians, protectors, holders of wealth. Now, they're not enlightened beings. They may have some clairvoyant powers or depending on the type. But they're not seen as enlightened beings, but it's important to keep harmonious with them. So, I mean, we don't want to upset anyone. So anyway, there's the Loch Ness Monster. So from the Tibetan viewpoint, he's a Naga, big Naga. When one Tibetan Lama came there to Scotland, he went out into the river. He actually went in, they hired a boat, he went into the loch and they did some prayers and made some offerings to the Naga there. So he probably maybe can see the Naga, I don't know. But anyway, Nagarjuna, he had a strong connection with the Nagas. He came around the 2nd century and he's, was prophesied by the Buddha to come and sort of clarify the wisdom teachings. So His Holiness talks often about Nagarjuna. He studied Nagarjuna's treatise and text, feels very close to Nagarjuna. So at some point, after the Buddha taught the Prajnaparamita, some of the Nagas took some versions of those to their realms. And at some point, Nagarjuna wanted to bring them back, into this realm. So he was able to communicate with the Nagas, and he went there, and the Nagas accepted to give some version of the Prajnaparamita back, what's the word? If Nagarjuna would offer teachings. So Nagarjuna offered teachings to the Nagas. So you often see Nagarjuna, he's got all these snakes behind him. Don't know if you've seen this Buddha, he's got all these different snakes. We could put it up on Zayla, do you want to share the PowerPoint again and have a picture of Nagarjuna on the PowerPoint? Yeah, thank you. I'll just mention this and one other thing and then we'll stop. So actually what that's showing in a way is that, as I said, the Nagas hold the wealth. They're holders of wealth, and they were sort of given and they held the wealth, wisdom teachings for a long time because somehow I think the human world, we didn't have the karma or merit to hold them, to have them at that time. But fortunately, 2nd century, Nagarjuna, he went back and retrieved those sutras. So it's just showing, so what is emptiness? It's this great inner wealth. When that wisdom mind awakens, His Holiness said that when he felt like when he was going to realize, close to realizing emptiness, he would take a long break. That's what he felt like in his mind. There would be a long break. What would the break be from? Like, when we want to go on a really great holiday and we just bathe in the sun and it's all wonderful and we feel really peaceful. It's kind of like that. What the break is, what he was emphasizing, the break was from this constant to and froing, this constant kind of pain of the sense of self. When that's completely uprooted, it's like your mind just goes into this like really deep, peaceful, blissful space, free from that, a holiday for that. Also in the FPMT, to create this wealth, the causes and conditions for us to be able to meditate more in emptiness, to feel more inspired towards that, to move in that direction, to feel like that's what we want to do with our human life. Lama Zopa Rinpoche decided that he wanted to create causes for all of us, to have always written in gold the Prajnaparamita. So there's Nagarjuna there. You see, so sometimes you see that Buddha and he's got the snakes behind him. It's showing his connection with the Naga realm, and he's also called Nagarjuna. But it's just showing like he was the one that brought back the sacred teachings from that realm, from the Nagas, and clarified them. And that's what we are studying these today, really clarifying the wisdom that we need to awaken to overcome this sense of self. That's what all these levels, 100,000 verses, 25,000 verses, 8,000 verses, they're all saying the same thing, just in a more elaborate way. There's another, can we do the next one, Sheila? I think that's the one with Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Venerable Sering. So just inspire us, to create the cause, I think for all of us, as I said, to get more inspired, more moved in that direction. Maybe the next one. That one. I used to live, when I lived at Rinpoche's house in Aptos, Venerable Sering here. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave him the work of this life. He's been doing it over 20 years. The work of his life is to write in gold the 8,000 verses of the Prajnaparamita. So he's been doing that for about 20 years. And it's dedicated for us, for FPMT, for the success of our organisation, and for each one of us to realise the precious wisdom, realising emptiness. So why is it written in gold? Because when that touches our mind, when we have that experience, it's like our mind becomes gold, precious. So Venerable Sering does this, like, I don't know, 5 days a week, some hours every day, writing through. There's he's already got, like, you can imagine how many volumes right now he's been through in 20 years. And also Rinpoche himself in the top there, he also, before Rinpoche manifested the stroke, also was writing himself those scriptures in gold, So for us so this is like also like it's like a condition. We need many, many conditions for our minds to really awaken that wisdom. So I guess Rinpoche felt like for us, for the organisation, it was important for the success of the centre, for all the centres, for the organisation, for the students, to create a certain merit for us all to be really interested, investigative, to really want to awaken that quality of mind, that wisdom realising emptiness, to create the causes for that in each one of us. So I'll just, I kind of wanted to share that, to let you know about that. That's some of the things that are happening in the background to support us in our spiritual practice. So yeah, I think just takeaway. Hopefully there's a takeaway, some takeaway. The main thing, why we do all these different meditations mainly is to chip away at this sense of self, to make that our kind of life's work, to try and investigate more deeply what is blocking our wisdom, and to try and get a really, really clear sense of, in this tradition, not just going into meditation, but actually using meditation to analyse the sense of self, to cut through the wrong view of self. That's what we really need to do. When we're in any space of meditation, just bring a little bit of that to mind. All right. We do some dedication. I think that's also on the PowerPoint, Sheila, at the
we have
probably
one
at the end.
question. Okay.
Oh yeah, please, if you've got a question, please ask a question. Oh no, wait a minute. Can I take this, turn this off and put,
The
oh, yeah, please ask a question.
the question is, you spoke earlier about courage.
Okay, let's see.
Is
There was a
courage
question
Okay.
and question from Shayla. You spoke earlier about courage. Is courage classed as a virtue? If so, can we dedicate our practice in order to create the merit to increase courage?
Courage. I think if we do use this word courage, it's important. It is a virtue. It depends what the courage is aimed towards, probably. They don't really, they don't really mention courage so much as one of, I don't know, is it in the 51 mental factors? It's not in one of those. I think courage, we do say courage because I think as Westerners, we relate to that word, yeah? Maybe a Tibetan tradition, they don't use that so much. I think courage we translate as joyous effort. Yeah. But yes, we can definitely dedicate for more joyous effort because we need that, you know. And it's not just an effort. There is a joy. We need a joy, you know. It's quite key there, and that takes a while in our spiritual practice to develop a joy. Sometimes it just feels like a hardship, you know, as it does when we're recovering from anything, you know. When we have to put work, we're trying to move and nudge against the delusions, you know. So when the delusions are strong, it's very hard for the kind of natural joy of the mind to feel strong. So yeah, I think, Sheila, we can dedicate for that. We can dedicate that. That's a virtue. That's a perfection. That's a state of mind we need alongside our spiritual practice. And especially because that one comes in this, there's these 6 perfections in practice. So joyous effort comes before the last 2, concentration, you know, and then that's the 5th perfection. And the last one is special insight, you know, wisdom realizing emptiness. So it's actually good to dedicate to have more joy, more effort, because we need that to go through the kind of tougher ones, a concentration and emptiness, you know, they come later in terms of the 6th perfection. Does that answer your question, Sheila? Or was it, yeah. Oh, it's Amanda. Anyone else? So I can't, you know, in terms of like approaching emptiness, I can't, I mean, for all of us, some of us who have been practicing for some time, we can't underestimate how important purifying and accumulating merit is. Now, we can purify by doing extensive study. Some of us are more inclined in that direction, you know, to really study, analyze. That helps us to break down concrete concepts, you know, the concepts, distorted views that are not supporting us. And that also creates a merit, you know, because if we enjoy our studies, we get fed by our studies. They go deeper into our mind, our consciousness, allow us to go deeper in our practice. That's wonderful, you know, because how we go deep is purifying, collecting merit. And the other way is deep studies. And the other way is, which isn't like just also, it's like also and also, not just like either one or the other, is the importance to purify the mind, you know, have a purification practice. We do the Vajrasattva 5 days a week here, which is wonderful. That gives people opportunity to purify with others, collect merit. As I said, when we offer the mandala offering, we have to create this energetic, positive space in our mind, the right environment to realize emptiness. But that doesn't mean from now we can't just start to analyze how the eye is appearing in our mind, the gacha, the object to be refuted. We can get a wee bit clear on that, get a little bit clearer insight how it's appearing in a mistaken way. That's wonderful. That's a wisdom already. Just being able to do that when you're quiet in your meditation. Oh, I just want to be quiet. I just want to be peaceful. I just want to watch the breath. But also, just watching that space when you're going about your house, your day, when the eye comes up, how's that appearing? Am I my thoughts, my body at that time? Is that correct for yourself? We need to question it a lot first. And if we get a little bit of insight, even just a small space or gap of insight to see that it doesn't, wow, that's not how I exist. That's like a big, like Rinpoche would say, an atomic bomb on our wrong view, our wrong concept. Just a small insight into that. So I just encouraging that. I try to do that when I'm mindful, just looking, especially when you're on your own at the house. A lot of us live alone and we're just used to being on our own and do, and the mind's always there. See if we can just try and use a wee bit of insight into seeing how the eye's appearing to the mind. Try and question it, challenge it, nudge it. Because without that, it's like we're just going to keep cycling, We're just going to have another eye, another eye, another eye, another eye, We need to get fed up with the eye. Fed up with the me. Fed up with the mine, We get to get really fed up with it and want to get this deep solution going, So, all right, let's just dedicate. Very good, yeah. So as Lamso Rinpoche would do, due to all the merits of the past, present, and future, so we need a lot of merit, as I said. We need to have these two collections, merit and method, merit of method and merit of wisdom. We need to collect these two in our mind. And that's always, with those two, we can create very easily, mind can move into realizations and deeper spiritual insights. So we meditate for merit part, the emptiness, relative bodhicitta, and then for the wisdom part, wisdom realizing emptiness. So we always try to dedicate every positive action, our body, speech, and mind, of ourselves, of others, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the 3 times, dedicating that for each one of us to develop this very precious, rich minds of bodhicitta and emptiness. Janju senju rinpoche magi panam ge gyurshik yewa nyamba mebaya gone gondu belwar shok. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. And for His Holiness's long life. I think is that in the next one yet? We can just, included in that, we can also just maybe, instead of the swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we can include the long life of the young Tulku who's already been born but not found or recognized yet, for his long life, and all other teachers, all the Sangha, all of us to have a long life. So we have as much time as possible to realize emptiness and bodhicitta, to make significant imprints on the mind as much as we can this life, familiarity with at least this life. Incomparable, kind, and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Also remember to stay for tea and cake. It's Bill's birthday. He's in the